Good evening, everyone, and welcome officially to our second Virtual Star Live session. My name is Craig Johnson. I'm the Director of Orientation Programs here at Purdue University, and we hope that you're enjoying your Thursday and that you're safe and well wherever you may be in the world. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to share just a few updates with you about our live events. Thanks so much to those of you that tuned in on Tuesday night for the Introducing V-Star session with panelists on family support. If you missed that session or are hearing about it now for the first time, you can watch it in its entirety on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and our website. Also on our website, you can get the latest information about these sessions and V-Star itself. We have made some edits to the frequently asked questions page, and you can access that at purdue.edu/orientation/VStar and click on FAQs. Additionally, if you are with us on Tuesday or if you're joining us for the first time tonight, we have a brief survey on our live sessions page where we ask for your feedback about these events. We hope that they are of value to you in your Purdue transition, and all the feedback would be helpful for us to make these better moving forward. So the last reminder before we get started, V-Star officially goes live on Monday. So you'll receive an email on Monday with more direction on how to access the course, what you need to do to log in, and more specifics on the timeline you're working with to complete it. What's great about V-Star is that it's at your own pace, so you can start and stop and finish on your own timeline. And when you've completed the modules in full, your advisor will connect with you in the days after to schedule your academic advising appointment. As long as that appointment takes place before July 10th, you'll be good to go to receive your fall schedule in full at the end of July. So that is the quick couple of information points and updates that I have. Additionally, if you have any questions for our panel and panelists throughout the night, we recommend that you just pop those along in the chat on Facebook or on YouTube. Otherwise, I'm going to bring in all of our lovely panelists that are introducing themselves, that will be introducing themselves for the panel tonight. First off is our moderator tonight, Dr. Katie Sermersheim. She is an Associate Vice Provost and Dean of Students at Purdue. And with her tonight are three student panelists. We have Param Singh, Joseph Knight, and Nikki Slater. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic over virtually to our celebrity moderator tonight, Dr. Katie Sermersheim, and she can take it away from here. Have fun, y'all.
Thank you, Craig. Well, welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have all these new Boilermakers joining us this evening. As the Dean of Students, I have one of the greatest jobs on campus, and that is working with such amazing students who are part of the Purdue University family. With us this evening are three stellar students, student leaders, and I'm excited to give all of you an opportunity to hear from them, hear about their experiences, what they've learned, and what advice they have for you as an incoming student. So why don't we start off? I'd like to ask each of our students, and I'll start with you, Joe, have you tell us a little bit about yourself, your year in school, your major, where you're from, and why you chose Purdue.
Well, hello, everyone out there. My name is Joseph Knight. My major is Social Studies Education. I'm a senior, and I'm from Indianapolis. And I chose Purdue for the education program here. I was really impressed with the hands-on learning style that they do. And one of the really big draws was that you get to be in the classroom your first semester shadowing a teacher, and it was really reinforcing to get to see that, and it's made me love teaching even more, and I'm so excited to continue with that as I go through.
Great. Param.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I am Param Singh. I am a junior studying finance. I have two minors, one in HR management and the other in business economics. And I'm from Granger, Indiana. And why did I choose Purdue? I chose Purdue because I wanted a fresh start. I wanted to go somewhere that I could just kind of like start over and get a different environment and a different feel for a thing, like a bunch of things. So I chose Purdue and I haven't regretted it ever since. It was one of the best choices I've ever made.
Nikki, everyone's ready to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be tuning in with you all. As Dr. Katie said, my name is Nikki Slater, and I'm a junior from right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. So a bit down south, live right outside of the Smoky Mountains. And my major is hospitality and tourism management, and I'm minoring in Spanish. One reason why I really love Purdue and why I chose to come to Purdue was its many opportunities. Some of those included study abroad. I've been lucky enough to go on 2 study abroad programs since being at Purdue, and seeing just the plethora of opportunities and focus that Purdue has for study abroad just really pushed me to make that decision, and I have not regretted it since.
Very good. Thank you. Well, it's obvious with all three of you, you've taken a different route to get. I'm interested in hearing from you about some of the transition challenges you might have experienced, and then more specifically for our audience tonight, what advice might you give our incoming students to help them with their transition to Purdue? Let's do reverse order. Nikki.
All right. Well, I would say in regards to my transition, one of the biggest challenges I think that I faced was coming from out of state. And so I think with that, it was difficult for me coming into a community that I was very unfamiliar with. I didn't realize how much of a difference there would be even just regionally between the South, Southeast United States and the Midwest. And so coming into that, I felt a little bit like almost that there was some already sense of community built amongst a lot of students that were from Indiana, and they had certain things that they could connect with. And felt like sometimes I kind of had to read between the lines and figure out a lot of what some of that context was, just because I didn't have that, not being from here. So I would say something that really helped me was just, and as difficult as it was for me too, but just diving into as many opportunities as possible, whether that was seeing any call out poster, whether it was posted in my residence hall or something my RA would have just tried to dive into any opportunity that I could. And whether, especially at the beginning of each semester, there are so many different call outs and club organizations that you can join or express interest in. And that was something that really helped me get a sense of first of all, more opportunities that are at Purdue, but also it helped me build my own sense of community that ended up being very important and impactful for me.
Quick follow-up question. Nikki, will you share with our audience what a call out is?
Absolutely. Yes, I can recognize that might have been a bit of some jargon there. So a call out essentially is something that any student or club organization puts on at the beginning of a semester or school year. And it's essentially an open advertisement essentially to join their organization. So it could either be in the form of maybe an interview or just hey, here we're having a gathering where you can come and learn more about our club if you're interested in joining. So it's just kind of it's an introductory meeting that a lot of organizations will host in order for students to get to learn more about them.
Thank you. Param.
My transition, if I were to talk about it, I went from in middle school and high school, I was very shy and I feel like I was very quiet. And so when I thought about going to a big university of like 40,000 people, I was very almost anxious, right? And so what helped me with that transition was that I just branched out. I really got to talk to a lot of people during my orientation week, and when I got to talk to people in my classes, or whether just walking in the hall or just my residence hall. It was really cool that I got to talk to these different people. I became a social butterfly. I became very, very extroverted, which was just so crazy because when I thought about it, I always thought of myself being the most extreme introvert ever. And like that totally took a 180 once I got to college. So any advice that I would say is just take advantage of your opportunities once you get there. It's cool to make a lot of good friends. You're gonna get an opportunity to meet so many people that are just either like you or different from you. Both are just amazing opportunities, and take advantage of both and just get to know the people around you, because those 4 years, like, you're gonna have to count on your friends a lot. And it's just amazing that you can make so many friends in this university. It's great.
Thank you, Karam. Joe.
One thing that I would have to hit on when talking about my transition to Purdue would be the switch from a really small school to Purdue, which is not a really small school. It's a humongous campus in comparison to what I was used to in my hometown. Um, my first lecture class at Purdue was bigger than my graduating class of high school, and that was extremely intimidating for me. And one thing that sort of happened to me within that transition is I was struggling to stay afloat within that academic setting that I wasn't used to. And the tip I would have to avoid whatever situation you might come into within this change of academics is take advantage of the campus resources that we have, whether that's going to professors' office hours and talking with them about what you're experiencing in class. There's dozens of help rooms and SI sessions, and SI is supplemental instruction, which is sort of like an extra hour after class where you just go over that classroom information once more in a different way. There's dozens of resources for how to really go over this material, and all you have to do is make that first step to take advantage of them.
Excellent. Thank you. Great stuff, students. For the audience, I want you to know that we're in the middle of finals week here at Purdue, or at least in our academic calendar. So these three students are giving up some important study time to be able to share some of these great insights with you tonight. So we appreciate them joining us indeed. But students, your next question, and Param, we'll start with you first, is while you're in finals week right now, try to think back to that summer in between you finishing, I'm assuming, high school and starting at Purdue. What kind of experiences did you have over the summer? What were those transition issues, or what did you find yourself really thinking about? And in turn, how could you turn that into a tip or guidance for this group?
Definitely. So one of the biggest challenges that I was facing before I even got to Purdue was I switched my major. So at my start date, I went and I was originally a neurobiology major, and I knew that I didn't want to go into neurobiology, but my parents really wanted a doctor in the family, which I was thinking maybe I can do 12 years of studying something that I'm not so passionate about. But then that summer, it finally clinked in. I went to my advisor during my star date, and I told him, like, hey, I really like business. I'm more of a business guy. I don't know if I want to do neurobiology. So I got to like switch my major. I went through the CODO process, which is the process of changing your degree curriculum. So going through that process, I was a little like stressed, not sure what was going to happen. It was a lot of jargon being thrown around with my advisor. So I was confused. But honestly, once I got in through the first day, I was on the same boat with everyone. It was just so simple. And it was really cool to see that I actually that was my first step of becoming independent. And I made my own decision about my career. And so becoming more independent and just like learning from that whole process that it's okay to change your major, just as long as you're happy and you're doing something that you love at Purdue, that's the most important thing. So I think from that experience, I learned that it was right away that it's important to make your decisions on your own and think through them and just make sure you're doing something that you really love.
Great advice. Joe.
So one of the biggest challenges for me in the summer before college would be just the overwhelming, or seemingly, I guess, overwhelming amount of things you need to do before you get to school. whether that's registering for housing, going for your star day, all sorts of different like testing to see what math you'd be placed into. It seems like a never-ending checklist of things that you have to do. Um, and I was just kind of nervous I was going to forget things because there are at times I can be very unorganized if I'm not like writing things down. And I was trying to enjoy my last summer before college, and I was like, I don't want to stress about this too much. And so it all kind of jumbled up into this big sort of mess of things that I needed to take care of. But my advice on how to handle all of this, and I'm sure what it looked like for me back when I was transitioning is going to be vastly different for what it looks like for y'all out there. Just take a deep breath, make a checklist, cross one off whenever you can, and you'll get through it, and it'll be great.
Nikki.
Okay, so for me, I think one of my biggest challenges coming into my first semester at Purdue was more social based. And so I was lucky enough to grow up in the same school district and go to the same school system for my K through 12, essentially, kindergarten through my senior year. And so coming to Purdue was a big transition in that I was leaving some friends that I've known since I was 5 years old, and people that I've grew up with and have built these wonderful connections with. And so the thought of and concept of moving away and having to start all over, potentially create bonds that I've been fostering for 10 plus years in a semester was really scary to me. And on all honesty, I was very reluctant to begin that transition and to even think about it, because I was just missing my friends, and that even followed me into my first semester. So I would say something I wish someone would have told me, and a tip that I would give to all of you, is just to have as much of an open mind as you possibly can going into your first year at Purdue, because it undoubtedly will be different from whatever high school experience you had. And that's a good thing, because you will be facing new challenges and new opportunities. And that's what, at the end of the day, college is all about, is to get that new experience and prepare you for a new chapter. So yeah, embrace all the challenges, the hardships, and the triumphs as well that come with it, because it's supposed to be different. And I think that's something that I wish I would have known going into it. But yeah.
Excellent input from all three of you. Let's take that transition thinking a little bit further, specifically related to your housing experience. So, talking residence halls. At what point did you make a connection with your new roommate? Did you know your roommate ahead of time? If not, how did you start navigating those conversations, those relationships? So let's just talk about that a little bit. And let's go Joe, Param, and then Nikki.
Well, for roommates, for me, I actually roomed with my best friend from grade school. So I definitely knew the person before going into that experience. But I was sort of nervous for another reason, because maybe I knew a little too much about this person. So having to share a confined space with them was going to be different than what we were used to. And as long as y'all have a conversation about what goes where and when you all like to go to sleep and when you like to study, you can navigate that transition pretty easily as long as you have open communication.
So I actually had a unique experience. I went with a random roommate, and by doing so, I got to meet my roommate on the first day of school. But what was weird with my experience was that he never lived in the room. So I practically had a double room to myself the whole year. So honestly, it was nice that I had more liberty to do what I wanted with my room, but it did like kind of feel bad when other roommates were just hanging out and like I was just in my room. But what I did to fight that was I got along with my floors so well. Like our whole floor had like an open door policy almost. Like we would always just like either knock on each other's doors or just like talk to each other's in the common area in the hallways. And it was like really cool to see that no matter even though I didn't have a roommate, it felt like I had a roommate in the hallways or in the communal bathrooms. It was really cool.
Yeah, I resonate a lot with what Param said in that I also went random for my roommate selection. And the first time we connected was over the summer. And I remember we talked about coordinating the decorations we were going to have and just like trying to get really excited. And another preconceived notion I think I had was like, just I think there's a narrative that's, oh, you're going to be immediately best friends with your college roommate. And that's going to be your best friend for life. And so I think I, in some ways, tried to almost push a relationship with someone who I really didn't know too well, and then actually kind of step back and then get to know each other. And we ended up having a really good experience, just getting to know each other from like at a personal basis, and then going in. But it definitely took some time to build that. And just as Param said, I think something that really helped me in general was building community with my floor, with my RA, my resident assistant at the time, and just other people that lived on my floor and in my residence hall. And so there's all the residence halls do a really wonderful job of programming and creating events for everyone to get involved. And for someone like me who I really didn't know, there was only one other person from my high school that went to Purdue from my graduating class. So that was a really great start to develop relationships and build community, even just where I lived. And things like that events happen almost every single day that you can get involved with and put your foot in the door to at least meet some new people and make connections.
Nikki, I'm going to stay with you for a second. You're our out-of-state student, representing out-of-state students tonight. And you've probably touched on some of this, but if I phrase it this way, what would you say was your biggest challenge being an out-of-state student coming to Purdue?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of a loaded question too, because there are a lot of different pieces of that. But I would say what I touched on before about there's a big cultural shift in between regions. And I mean, I think for me, that was a big challenge of just not having the same context of conversation when getting to know people. Because I think something for me that I really focused on when meeting new people when I first came to Purdue was, oh, what do we have in common versus trying to focus on some of the differences that we have. So I think that was a big challenge, but also too, just in general, the distance wise became very difficult. I myself didn't have a vehicle my first year at Purdue, so I wasn't able to travel back and forth. And with it being about 7 hours or so from my home here in Tennessee to Purdue, I couldn't just decide one day to go home for a weekend. It took a lot more planning to think about when I was going to see my family next. And that definitely put into perspective a lot of other, put into perspective and almost pushed me to really try to build that community at Purdue and make Purdue the home that I had, because in a lot of ways I couldn't just drop everything and go home. So I would say that. And of course the weather too, when the snow did start coming, that was very, I was not prepared for that by any means, but I had a whole semester of preparation whenever that did come.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, Param and Joe, for you guys, we know that culture shock does not just apply to out-of-state or international students. It's likely you had an experience as well that was out of your comfort zone, or an unexpected relationship or friendship that you formed. I'm thinking of you, Joe, with moving here, living with a roommate that you knew since grade school, and Param, you've got examples to share as well. So why don't we hear from either of you? Param, both of you. Param, you want to go first?
I would love to. So I think one of the biggest things that I did see, the first thing when I went to Purdue, in my BGR group, I met my best friend. That was really cool. I wasn't expecting to make such a great friend from that, but it wasn't right away we became best friends. Actually, like I was the first person he had met who had worn a turban or didn't shave his facial hair. So we were very different. We didn't know much about, like, he didn't know much about my faith or just my background, and I didn't know much about him. But yet we still like got along. We had some common similarities, and yet we kind of like progressed in that relationship. We got to know more about each other. He got to know more about why I wear my turban, or like more, and I got to know more about his family. So that was a really cool experience, and I got a genuine friendship out of that. I think that was it was a definite big culture shock for him, and a culture shock for me as well. And so from that, it was really cool because at first it was a little uncomfortable, but we made the best of it. We became best friends, and he's still my best friend. We FaceTime daily today. So that's one really cool thing that came out of that whole experience.
You kind of touched on it before. It would have been really easy for me to not talk to anyone who I wasn't used to talking to, because I did have that roommate who I did know for a long time coming into this. And the point kind of expands further than him as my roommate. I could have just resorted to talking to people I knew from high school, because there was about 40 other people from my high school here at Purdue my freshman year. Um, but I kind of pushed myself, because I did go to a really small school, and pretty much the demographic at that school was white. So I was seeing a lot of people who were the same as me all throughout high school, and I've never really been challenged in any way like that. But just right off the bat, in your Boiler Gold Rush group, I met almost half my group challenged that image of what I thought school was like immediately, and it kind of just pushed me out of this zone that I thought I was used to, and I met a lot of people who were different from me, and just getting to talk about the differences with them was really great.
Thank you. Good stuff. Talking a lot about different transitions and missing home, missing friends, etc. I know watching tonight, in addition to our future Boilermakers, are their family members. So how frequently would you say, and maybe frequency is not really the question, but talk about communicating with family and parents. I think our parents want to hear each of you say you stayed in touch with the family members as appropriate. And then the students are probably like, well, yeah, what's appropriate? So let's just talk about connecting with family and parents a little bit. Nikki, will you start us off, and then we'll do Param and Joe?
Sure. So, in communicating with my family when I left for school, I'm actually the oldest daughter in my family. So I kind of I wasn't really sure what that looked like, at least going to Purdue and then deciding how communication would look like for my family. So that ended up being kind of a conversation that we all had. For them too, it was not just me going to college for the first time. I was also their first child to go to college. So navigating that transition was a bit unfamiliar for them as well. So what worked for us is having a conversation together and kind of deciding, even past me moving in and having my first months or so at college, deciding, okay, how busy are you? What does your schedule look like? Because they wanted to be as understanding of my schedule and me meeting new people, and they wanted to make sure that I was out there meeting people, getting involved as much as I could be. So, and I was very grateful for that. So it kind of just was an ongoing conversation that honestly continues until this day, going into my senior year. So it ranges. I mean, I guess depends. Of course, when there's finals week and midterms and things like that going on, the communication lacks a little bit between me and home. But I try to check in at least once a week, just because I know that that's important to try to check in with them, and also with me too, because I like knowing what's going on, being so far away. And it's nice as well to get to see some of the different, when the leaves change at home, and I love to get to see what I'm missing at home, and vice versa. Purdue's actually my dad's alma mater as well, so informing him about new buildings going up and things like that are always kind of fun to check in. But overall, it's been something that's ongoing, and that's worked for us.
So I am actually the youngest. So I had two older sisters that went to college, and they had a routine where they would call every single day. But I, being the youngest, I was told that, you're going to call us every single day. And I failed miserably, actually. I was good at a solid one time a week. And then my family said, all right, well, like cut it down, like try for 3 times a week. Yet I was getting worse. I was getting once every 2 weeks. And so I think that what we kind of found was a great thing was just whenever we are free or whenever my parents are free, they'll either text me or call me, and I'll make sure to put a note in my agenda like I have to call home. And it's I'll either let them know what's going on with school or just my other organizations and obligations filled with college, or if they're busy with business or just work or just family. So it shifts a lot with every semester. I would say sometimes you have a freer semester where you aren't taking as rigorous course, where your other obligations, say your social obligations or just your academic or extracurricular obligations, aren't as heavy. So it really does just depend on that. I would say you would test it out like the first 2 weeks of a semester, know what works for you, and try to make a routine from that. So every semester it varies, but I really do try to call them once every 2 weeks, which is I think is a good sweet spot.
So communication with home for me, that's an interesting topic. When I got to Purdue, I certainly took my new freedom that I had found of not having to communicate it with home and ran with it. So for about a semester, I really didn't talk that much with my parents or my younger sister. And it kind of created tension in my family just because like my mom was upset I wasn't talking with them. I realized I didn't know anything that was happening in their lives. So there really was this disconnect that had formed because I chose to not communicate at all. I guess we sort of found common ground on this by sort of just doing check-ins every now and then where I'll call my mom and catch up on things with her. And what really worked well is like finding some sort of regular check-in like that, as Param was talking with calling, but also just sort of little text communication can go a long way. Just like a little, if you have a family group chat or just texting individual family members, how was your day? What have you been up to this week? That can really go a long way for communication, and you can really stay connected with home and family that way.
Well done. Great information. I think the key there is to communicate about communication. Have a plan, have an understanding, have an agreement, acknowledge that it will be different. So kind of staying on the same theme of home and Purdue and home, I'd like to ask our students, and I'll start with you, Param, then Joe and Nikki. Uh, when you first, well, not even first, but when you're at Purdue, what do you miss most about home? And then when you're home, what do you miss about Purdue?
So when I'm at Purdue, what do I miss the most is actually who I miss the most. It's probably my sisters. They've been my biggest role models in my life. So honestly, I miss them a lot. It's crazy. I always think about them. I like kind of like tell myself like, oh, like, this is what my sisters would do if I'm in a certain situation. So I miss them a lot, like not being able to spend time with them just because we were close as siblings. And what do I miss the most when I'm at home is definitely my friends, just because, again, I became a social butterfly, and my friends are like some of my most important people I have in my life, just because they are always telling me, you can do this, or either supporting me or encouraging me or just there whenever I need to like unload and talk to. So the friends and like sister aspect, and then Another thing that I really do miss about Purdue, though, is just the whole campus, the atmosphere. It's just exhilarating. It's amazing when you're just walking through and it's a bright day, it's a sunny day, the fountains are on, and you just see other Boilermakers just walking to classes, or they're either hammocking or they're just sitting by the fountains and enjoying a nice day. That's what I miss a lot, especially with it getting warmer outside. I miss Purdue's campus, and I think I need to go back soon just to either visit or just kind of get a little bit of that, that sense of like Purdue's campus, either that Boilermaker pride. I just need to go back and just soak it in for a little bit.
Param, can you expand upon, I think you made it a verb there, the hammocking?
Oh, yes. So, it is not uncommon to go on Purdue's campus and see a lot of Boilermakers just either setting up hammocks and just relaxing and just enjoying the simple day with in their hammocks. It's a cool tradition we have here. You'll see it a lot around the clapping circle, which is located by the Purdue Union, and then either by the engineering fountain as well. It's just honestly, you relax, you go with a couple of friends, grab a few hammocks, set it up by the trees, and you're either enjoying like the sound of the engineering fountain going off or just hearing what's going on in campus and just enjoying the warm weather and like this nice breeze. And sometimes if you're close enough, you'll feel enough mist from the engineering fountain, which is just the sweet spot. I think that's literally one of my favorite moments from hammocking. But it's not just those areas, it's all throughout campus. I think it's just a cool tradition we have here at Purdue. So if you're here early in the fall, you might see a few Boilermakers already setting up their hammocks.
To pass this question off to me, I would literally just copy Param's answer almost to the T. When I am at Purdue, what I'm missing from home is communicating with my little sister and staying involved in her life. And then when I'm at home, I'm missing just the feel of when you're on campus. I always like to talk about how when you're on campus, it feels like you're in this bubble of like just all these like people who are young and energized for school, and it's just an amazing feeling to be on campus, and I absolutely miss it.
So for me, I think whenever I come home, or whenever I'm at Purdue, rather, the thing I miss the most about home is what I'm looking at right now that you all can't see, but out of my window, I'm looking at the Smoky Mountains. So I live right in the middle of them in East Tennessee, and I've been grateful enough to be surrounded by nature and mountains and just topography, I guess, my entire life. And so coming to Purdue, that's always something I miss, is just being surrounded by those beautiful mountains and the nature and everything that goes along with that. But when I'm home, just like what Joe and Param touched on, I also miss my friends a lot. And I think it's always nice to come home, and it makes me miss the people that I've met, the opportunities that I've had, even clubs and honestly sometimes classes too. Just it has shown me how much I've grown, and it makes me want to go back to campus to be once again in that area, in that community, in that space where I get to be the best version of myself, where I get to embrace those wonderful opportunities. But it's always kind of a nice reminder to see, this might have been where I've grown up, but look how much I've changed now, and how much I feel like I've bettered myself and everything. So yeah, it's nice both ways, to come home, but also be on campus.
It's so awesome to hear all three of you describe the campus. That with us going through this whole COVID-19 global pandemic, having the campus in essence empty it's been just there are no words really. I mean, I miss you all. I miss the students so much, and looking forward to an opportunity to have everybody back on campus and get those hammocks back out there and enjoy this beautiful weather with the walkways and the benches full of students again. So your descriptions are very much so hitting the heart of a dean of students saying, we need you all back soon. Let's transition a little bit, talking about scheduling. So in high school, the schedules are pretty structured. You walk into the building at whatever hour, you leave at whatever hour. And college has a very different, a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility on your schedule. So, considering our audience tonight, please share with the students what that transition is like, how you can kind of anticipate it. Does it change from semester to semester, year to year, same as a freshman to a senior? Nikki, would you start us off, and then we'll go Joe and Param.
Absolutely. So I think for me, the best way I can describe balancing and adjusting to Purdue's schedule and in regards to what or comparing it to your high school schedule is just flexibility is going to be the key word. I think for me, not only has my schedule and rigor of it changed semester to semester, but even professor to professor. The different professors might have different rules or regulations or things that they like to have in the classroom, things they don't, and that can change based on the type of classes you're taking, the professor you have as well. So I think the big thing for me to just what to get adjusted to was that change and that flexibility and how it can always be moving around, because I know in high school something that works really well for me was just having that structure, and every teacher pretty much operated the same way because they were following what the school followed. But at Purdue, there's a lot of change that happens, even going from one class, you might be a math class to another, could be a design class or something. So there's just a lot of variety that could happen in your schedule. So I would say that, and some tips for me, once again, with just keeping that open mind about the classes that you might be having. But we've been kind of touching on communication throughout the evening tonight, and that's something that will extend even to your professors, in addition to your family, but communicating with your professors about how navigating this transition might be difficult for you. If professors, in my experience, have always really appreciated being honest and just candor with them about if you are struggling or if you do need extra help. Joe touched a little bit earlier on supplemental instruction, and all professors are required to hold office hours as well. So there are a lot of resources because at the end of the day, professors just want to be there to help their students. So they love communicating with the students, and they are the experts on that as well. So that's always been something very helpful for me. It was just being open and honest about how I was feeling.
I gotta say the biggest switch from the high school schedule for me to the college schedule is just the amount of sheer free time that you have in college that you then have to construct into productive time. So, like for example, my first semester here at Purdue, I didn't have a class until 10:30 every day. So these first few weeks, I didn't handle that very well. I slept until 10 every single day because I could. Boy, was that not a really good way to study and start my day. You got to just take whatever schedule you have. You're going to have sometimes hour-long gaps, sometimes 2-hour-long gaps. Then you got to figure out what you're going to do in that time, because oftentimes if you're just walking back to your room and like turning on Netflix, that hour is thrown out the window. And realistically, you could have just stayed on campus, knocked out some work for an hour, saved yourself an hour of work later in the day, and it would have been really helpful. So just managing that free time that you're now given in such a plethora compared to high school of like, you start the day at 7 and you go until 3, and then if you have extracurriculars, you keep going till late in the night, and then you go do homework. Well, you can do homework all day if you potentially want to, and you have all your nights free. It's really just about finding what works best for you. And then this schedule that you then build up for the semester changes the next semester once you get your next classes. So it's really just about being flexible with that and finding what works each semester based on what you're given.
I think that was just an amazing answer. I would say the same thing. Be very conscious of what you do in your free time. That's the biggest thing I want to take away. Just because my first semester, Joe didn't start until 10:30. I started at 1:30 slash like 2:30. So as a freshman, I was, staying up really late and getting up really late just because I was like, okay, I finished the day in around 6 o'clock, and I would have dinner, and then I would just go either watch TV and then start my homework around midnight and just go up until like 3 and then go to bed, which was just not the best schedule. Like I think back on it, wasn't one of the smartest decisions I ever made. So and then that was a big transition to the next semester when I had a bunch of 7:30s in my schedule. So it was kind of like a constant like flexibility that Nikki touched on, just knowing that every semester you have to change your kind of like your schedule to that semester and really take that syllabus week, which is the first week of classes, and kind of like tone down on what you want your schedule to look like, and then just trying to find making those productive free times. So I personally, I have a preference when I make my schedule in college. I just like to have the classes in the day, try to get them as close as possible, try, like in 3 hours, get done with 3 classes. And then I have time for either breakfast, lunch, and then I can just go over and do my homework and be done for have a good evening for the night. So that's my personal preference. You just find that out as you go through every semester. You kind of find out what works for you and what doesn't. Just making sure that you're being productive is the biggest thing, and just being flexible.
Very good. We have time for one more question. After I hear from our 3 students, we're going to turn it back over to Craig Johnson to see about, he'll wrap it up, see if we have questions from the audience or anything. So students, I'll ask the question, see if you've got this brief, succinct answer. If I ask the question, what are you most thankful of, most proud of, most appreciative of related to your Purdue experience, what would that be? Nikki, Param, then Joe.
All right, that's a tough question. I would say it's tough to put it just to one thing. But for me, I think the thing that I'm most proud of, if I had to summarize it in one word, it would be growth. I touched on that a little bit earlier, but I never in a million years would have imagined that I would be where I'm at today, whether that's in this Zoom call, chatting with all of you, or just embracing the opportunities that I've been able to since coming to Purdue. I never would have anticipated that when I was a senior coming into Purdue, a high school senior. So yeah, I would say that it's opened up. I've just been so thankful for the opportunities that I've had to really just embrace who I am and learn so much from others around me.
Honestly, I gotta say my one word is opportunities. Just because I think that wraps it all up. Just because when I was a senior in high school, I did not know what to expect. And when I came to Purdue, there was an opportunity to make friends, an opportunity to make myself grow into a more independent person. There was an opportunity to become a true Boilermaker and develop that Purdue rigor. And there was an opportunity to just make sure that I knew after I graduated here that I did whatever I could in my 4 years to make sure I was the best Param that I could be. I think from those, all of those opportunities have helped me grow into who I am today and just make me be super confident going into the real world after my senior year next year, and just know that, hey, I got this. I think that's the coolest thing that I'm going to be taking away from all in that one word.
And I am most thankful for my Purdue experience that Purdue has challenged me, whether that's challenging me by the different people I've met, whether that's challenging me academically to be the best that I can be, or all sorts of ways you're going to be challenged at Purdue, and it really does push you to grow, as Nikki was saying, into sort of the best you can be, and it's really amazing.
Wow. Thank you, students. Really spectacular advice, input, story sharing, and insight. I miss you. Get yourselves back here to campus when it's safe, when it's safe. Very good. At this point in time, we will turn this back over to Craig Johnson to wrap up our time this evening. Craig.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Katie, and thanks to Param, Joe, and Nikki. We've got a couple of questions from the audience that I'd like to pose to our students on the call tonight. First, I know there have been some technical things going on specifically on Facebook, so thanks for staying with us. We'll make sure that we get the full video up on the website here in the next couple of days so you can catch everything that you might have missed. So for the three of you, what would you say was your biggest mistake and also your biggest accomplishment that you experienced as a freshman? And so we're gonna do the reverse order thing, and sorry to put you on the spot, Joe, but we're gonna go with you first, then Param, and then Nikki. So biggest mistake and your biggest accomplishment as a freshman.
Biggest mistake is easy. I feel like that's so easy to talk about how I messed up as a freshman. I would say my biggest mistake was not pushing myself. I kind of just talked about how I loved to be challenged by Purdue. And my freshman year, I spent most of my time sitting in my room watching Netflix, doing things to pass the time, and really not taking advantage of being on campus and being with all these wonderful people here at Purdue. And my greatest accomplishment as a freshman would have to be in that first semester. I kind of touched on this before. In my education classes where I got to shadow a teacher, I scored really well in that class, and I connected with the teacher I shadowed really well. And it sort of really reinforced this love and passion I have for teaching. And it's kept me going. And here I am still wanting to teach after all this time shadowing teachers and all this, even with all the crazy new ways I'm going to have to teach due to this pandemic. But that would probably be my biggest accomplishment.
So my biggest mistake, as a freshman, I would say I didn't take care of myself enough. I was making sure that I was fulfilling my student obligations. I was making sure I was fulfilling my obligations to my friends, fulfilling my obligations to my family. But in the end of the day, I wasn't making sure that I was getting enough rest. I was getting enough food. Second semester, I was so stressed about my grades that I actually dropped 20 pounds in one semester just because I was either constantly going to the libraries or just constantly studying, or just when I did have free time, I was constantly with my friends. I needed to make sure that I was taking care of myself and like calling, like, hey, I need an off day. I need to relax. I need to chill out. I'm going to go watch some Netflix, going to make sure I am okay. So that's one of my biggest mistakes that I made. Oh, but don't worry, I gained those 20 pounds back. My biggest accomplishment, honestly, I think it was the growth that came out of that year. I experienced a lot of things. I went from being that really, really shy guy, which I kind of talked about throughout tonight, but I grew into somebody that was very much more confident and very much more social. And I just was able to like go away with some really cool group of friends that freshman year. It was amazing to just be with them and just continuing those relationships over the summer. It really made me feel like I had a family like outside of my family, and I really didn't feel like that before. So that was definitely my biggest accomplishment, developing that second family.
So for me, I think I'll start with my biggest mistake. I think for me, that is a conversation of the quality versus quantity. So I remember kind of what I touched on earlier, me having I had a pretty big group of friends and a pretty consistent group of friends from when I was in high school that some people I have known since I was like 5 years old. And coming to Purdue, I almost wanted to mirror that group of friends that I've always been used to. And I kind of related, okay, so having more friends is better, or having more people in my circle is going to help and set me up for greatness and set me up for a wonderful college experience. And I got about halfway through my first semester and realized I actually don't know any of these people that I'm really hanging out with. And I just have this large group of people that I kind of hang around with, but I don't really know anyone. And so I realized it was much more impactful to have those deeper relationships, even if that meant that there were less people in my circle. And I could even relate that as well to organizations. I remember coming into college and I just dove in trying to join as many things as possible. And it definitely ended up spreading me really thin. And I wasn't able to, whether it was hang out with people or take care of myself, like Param touched on. And I realized much later in my freshman year that it's much better just for me and others around me if I'm focusing on the things that I'm truly passionate about, rather than just getting things to either like pad my resume or meet as many people as possible. So I would say that, because it took me a little bit to realize that. And then for my biggest accomplishment, I did struggle a lot coming into college and adjusting to the academics. But my biggest accomplishment was, despite that struggle, really, and despite just other struggles throughout freshman year, really just persevering in the few projects that I had. And I had a couple of classes where there were projects that were going on through the entire semester. And so it was really, and that was a new experience for me. And I felt really accomplished getting to see a semester's worth of work kind of culminate into this big presentation, and just really feel proud of myself for that, and get to see this is not just a reflection of the work I've done, but also the growth I've had through an entire semester.
Perfect. All right. Thanks. I've got one more question for y'all before we officially end. So it's kind of a two-parter as well. So this was from our YouTube comments also. So I'm going to combine that with one other. What's one thing you wish you knew before coming to Purdue? And then, kind of in line with that, what's a piece of advice that you would have for incoming students as they go through the summer months in prep for Purdue? So one thing you wish you knew before you came to campus, and then one piece of advice that you would give to folks on their journey now. I'm going to start, because he's smiling right into the center of the camera. I'm going to start with Param and then switch it up, and we'll go to Joe and then Nikki to close.
Oh, what's one thing I wish that I would have known? I wish I would have known that classes are meant to be hard. I think one thing right away that I learned was that classes were definitely difficult from the classes that I was taking in high school. I thought, because I took all these AP slash dual credit classes, that I would be prepared for all the classes. And, first semester is going to be easy breezy. I was wrong. I got to actually learn things and not just memorize things. So that was really cool. In a lot of my classes, we talked about conceptual things, and I got to know more about Purdue's resources. So supplemental instruction and office hours, I was taking advantage of those things. So one thing that I would have wished I would have known was hey, classes are meant to be hard. You're not stupid. This is just how the course works. This is kind of forcing me to go out of my comfort zone and go to, take extra resources and just learn. So the biggest advice I got about that is use those resources. They're there for a reason, and Purdue really, it's helped so many students in the past, and it's going to help so many students in the future. Just reach out, and wherever you need help, it will be given. I think one of my favorite quotes from Albus Dumbledore is, help is, one second. It is, help will always be granted for those students that ask for it at Hogwarts. Sorry, I butchered the quote, but honestly, that can go to Purdue. Wherever you need help, it will be there if you ask for it. So that is how I'm going to end that piece of advice.
Wiser words have never been spoken around. Thanks for sharing all of that. That's really helpful. Joe, and then Nikki to close.
Okay, so one thing that I wish I had known going into college at Purdue is that there are times where you are not going to succeed. I had situations where I was jumping into things. I felt like I had never been like anything I put my mind to in high school, I was able to accomplish and be successful in, whether that was any of my extracurriculars or classes. And then when you come to Purdue, suddenly it's you're going something is not going to go right. And my advice is that's okay. Failing a class is failing a class. You'll get through it eventually, no matter how it goes. Not getting into a club you want to get into is okay. There's 30 other clubs. Go find one that wants you for you because you're special. So you're not going to succeed at everything, but that's just going to make those successes that much better when you do find them.
So something that I wish I knew coming into Purdue, was that just the notion of not pretending to be someone I'm not. So, and as cheesy as it sounds, be yourself really does go a long way. Purdue is a big enough community to where you will find your people and you will find a group that clicks with you and people that become your family, become your community. And so a piece of advice that I would give to incoming freshmen was that it would be that you are not alone in however you might be feeling, whether that's nervous or excited. I know I personally spent many a night just alone in my residence hall, like just being nervous to talk to people and just being by myself. And if I would have known that there were so many other people feeling the exact same way, I think I could have saved a lot of time, and also just build community with people and make those friendships. So just know that no matter what happens, you're not alone in the feelings that you may have, and that there's always someone to lean on and talk to.
Perfect. Well, I'm sure if you can hear it, I hear an ovation from around the country and around the world for all of the things that you've shared, for the three of you. Huge thank you to Joseph Knight, Nikki Slater, Param Singh for taking time out of their final exam week to talk through our V-Star live session tonight. Tremendous thanks are in order also for Dr. Katie Sermersheim, our Dean of Students, to facilitate tonight's conversation. Other major thank yous to our orientation programs team answering questions on YouTube and on Facebook, and of course, the hundreds of folks that joined us on Facebook and YouTube and on our website tonight. So we hope that you can join us again on Tuesday night for a conversation with members of the academic advising community about what to expect in your academic advising appointment this summer. Don't forget, V-Star goes live on Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, keep up to date with orientation updates on the V-Star website and follow our Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook accounts at All Aboard Purdue. Thanks for joining us tonight. Boiler out.